The digestive system is made up of a number of organs and is used to convert the food we consume into usable energy for our body to use as fuel, as well as extracting nutrients that are needed to keep the body healthy. Food enters at the mouth, goes through the pharynx and esophagus, then drops down into the stomach. At the time of the food dropping into the stomach, the liver and gallbladder are working to produce bile that can be passed on into the small intestines, while the pancreas works to produce enzymes. The semi-digested food then leaves the stomach and passes through the small intestines, the large intestines, rectum, and leaves the body through the anus. At the start of the digestive system is a mouth or buccal cavity. Before food even enters the body, the smell alone is enough to trigger the salivary glands, which is why people's mouth will often water when they can smell food. The teeth then aid in chewing food to break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces, whilst the saliva acts to moisten the food to make it easier to swallow. Within the saliva is the enzyme amylase, which is used to convert carbohydrates into glucose. The pharynx receives food from the mouth and delivers it to the esophagus. It's a funnel-shaped tube that is also used within the respiratory system, and for this reason it has a small flap called the epiglottis that prevents food from going down the windpipe when it's being used for respiratory purposes, and similarly stops excess air going down through the digestive system while a person eats. The esophagus is a muscular tube connecting the pharynx to the stomach. The layer of smooth muscle lining the esophagus means that it can contract to push the chewed food down from the pharynx to the stomach. These contractions are called peristalsis. At the top of the esophagus is the upper esophagus sphincter, which prevents food from going back up through the digestive system by constricting. The stomach is essentially an acid bath. Food travels down from the esophagus into the stomach, which contains hydrochloric acid and enzymes called protease to break down the proteins into amino acids in order to grind and break up the food as much as possible. The substance of semi-digested food is called chyme and is then passed down into the small intestines. The liver has many different roles within the body, but the main purpose it serves within the process of digestion is to produce bile and secrete it into the small intestines. The gallbladder purpose is to store and recycle any excess bile from the small intestines so that it may be reused for the digestion of other subsequent meals. The pancreas is a large gland that is connected to the duodenum. The pancreas is where insulin is produced to maintain the levels of sugar in the blood. However, it has an important role to play within the digestive system too. It acts as an enzyme factory which produces all three enzymes, amylase, protease and lipase, which are secreted into the small intestines to be used in the chemical digestion of foods. Amylase are used to break down the food source carbohydrates into glucose, protease break down proteins into amino acids, and lipase break down fats into fatty acids. The small intestines have many ridges and folds which are used to maximise the digestion of food and absorption of nutrients. By the time food has passed through the intestines, around 90% of the nutrients have been extracted from the food that entered the body. The duodenum is the first section of the small intestines which receives the partially digested food known as chyme from the stomach, and it then passes through the rest of the small intestines where the good is separated from the bad, the end result being more of a liquid that is then passed into the large intestines. The large intestines are used to extract water and separates toxins, bacteria and waste from the liquid waste that has been passed down from the small intestines. The beginning section of the large intestines is the cecum, something like that, which acts as a cul-de-sac where bacteria and partially digested food from the small intestines can mix together to form feces. The feces are then passed through the large intestines by the walls of the large intestine contracting and squeezing to push the stool down through the intestines. These contractions are called peristalsis muscle contractions. When the last section of the large intestines is full, it's released into the rectum. The rectum is the final section of the large intestines which connects the colon to the anus. This is where the stool is stored that was produced in the colon until the body is ready to dispose of the waste. Whilst the stool is being stored in the rectum, water is absorbed by the rectum walls and returned back to the blood supply. As more feces fill the rectum, it applies pressure to the rectum walls and stimulates the stretch receptors. This sends a signal to the brain which instigates a feeling of discomfort and allows a person to know that they need to go to the toilet. The anus is the last section of the digestive tract and is the final part the feces will pass through during defecation. The two sphincter muscles are responsible for the opening and closing of the anus. When it's empty or only slightly filled, both the internal and external sphincters remain closed in order to hold the waste in. But once the pressure of the rectum walls reaches the point at which a signal is sent to the brain, a signal is then sent to the internal sphincter to get it to relax. Meanwhile, the external sphincter continues to hold feces in the rectum until a voluntary signal is sent from the brain telling it to relax and for excretion to occur. There are three key functions of the digestive system: digestion, absorption, and excretion. Digestion, in simpler terms, is the process of breaking down foods into its component chemicals. This can be broken down to two parts: mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion is the physical breakdown of food into smaller pieces, which starts with the chewing by the teeth and continues into the muscular mixing of food by the stomach and intestines. Chemical digestion, meanwhile, starts with the secretion of amylase through the saliva, followed by the enzymes and acid in the stomach. But the bulk of digestion takes place in the intestines. Once food has been broken down into its building blocks, whether it be glucose, amino acids, or fatty acids, it is then ready to be absorbed by the body. To begin with, in the stomach, small molecules like water and alcohol are absorbed directly into the bloodstream. The majority of the absorption takes place within the walls of the small intestines, with the small blood and lymphatic vessels in the intestinal wall pick up the molecules and carry them around the body. Water, vitamin B and K are also absorbed by the large intestines before feces leave the body. Excretion is the final function of the digestive system and is referred to as defecation. This is the process of removing indigestible substances from the body so that they don't accumulate inside the gut. The job of the kidneys is to filter the blood, removing waste, controlling the body's fluid balance and maintaining the body's level of electrolytes. As blood enters the kidneys, waste products are removed and the salt, water and minerals are adjusted if needed. This happens several times a day, and any waste is turned into urine and stored in the bladder until it's ready to be disposed of.